So Rapido recently, maybe it was a few months ago, announced a new line of coaches they were doing called the Evolution Coaches. And here they are on the screen, right, for you to enjoy. And when I saw these bad boys, I thought, gee, doesn't that look familiar? Now, you might guess what I'm thinking of, and it's one of these bad boys. So this is a Hornby Railways Clerestory coach. It dates back to Triang, and they're still making the thing. These are ubiquitous. There's tens of millions of them out there in the world. I recently bought 3 of these for 80 Australian dollars, noting that one Evolution coach would cost 140 Australian dollars. Now, I think it's pretty easy to see how this can turn to an Evolution coach. You've got the one on the left, you just take off the clerestory and fill it in. You've got the middle one, you just take off the roof and make a new roof. And the right one is just this. You just paint it nicer. So I'm going to show you today in this video how you can make all 3 of these coaches using just the humble Hornby Clerestory coach. And why I think I can save you a good... I don't know. It depends how much you can buy a 3-pack of these things for. For me, $80 compared to $450. I think I've saved a little bit of money here. Now, this is going to be a very basic tutorial. All right, the Evolution coaches are very, very highly detailed. They deserve the amount of money they're pulling in, and the designers at Rapido really do care. So this is going to be your budget model railways. I have the thing version of the coach. So you've got the general silhouette, the general shape. We're going to be adding some interior detail. We're going to be painting them up in the Railway Series NWR style, because that's what I model. And we're going to have a fun time. So thanks for coming on the video. Let's see how I do it. Alrighty, we'll start us off with the modifications for turning the clerestory roof into a flat roof. So the first and the most logical step is to cut off the clerestory. Yes, we can just turn this roof into the flat roof by removing the clerestory, and it's not even that hard. Just get it off with a saw blade and then make sure that it's nice and flat, get all the rest of the ridges off, and the internal walls need to be flat as well. So there's all these notches left over. I'm going through with a knife, removing them to make a nice flat surface for us to insert some plastic next to. So next comes some measurements for the bit of plastic we're going to stick on the inside of this. Now, what I'm going to do first is make 2 additional bits of thin plastic. This is on some 0.5 thick millimeter plastic card, because I want to have some support on the bottom of it. So something coming from the roof section up to it. So then we have a singular sheet of 1 mil thick plastic that fills the whole gap. If that sounds confusing, you'll see what I mean in a moment once I cut and glue these on. So applying that glue liberally to the underside of the roof. And they're going to put one of these strips of plastic on it, and you'll see how we've sort of gone into the gap with that bit of plastic, so that we're giving a floor, a little ledge for our filler bit to sit on. And we'll do that twice. Oh, and for some reason here I've come and I've started to shave away some of the edge smoother in between that, so I guess that's just what I did. Anyway, getting that next bit of plastic in. So now we have 2 ledges for our main bit of filler plastic to sit on. And measuring up the inside there. I think this is 18.2 by 18 mil or something. 18.2 centimeters, 18 mil. Whatever it was, you can see I've actually done one before. I made 2 of these roofs, I believe. I must have. Anyway. Actually, no, I think I did it. I had a go at it and then came back and filmed cutting out this bit of plastic. Perhaps. That's why there's an exactly equal amount of plastic missing in the top of this sheet of black plastic card. You know, sometimes that happens. I just have to try something out and then come back and go, oh, okay, I guess I better film that, it worked. Because it's all trial and error at the end of the day. And you can see here, perfect example of trial and error. Measure once, oops, need to cut again. Measure twice, cut twice is always the answer. I'm marking which way up is because there's imperfections along the side of this roof cutting, and so it'll be handy to know which direction this thing was facing, so I can cut off plastic from the correct side and correct little bits of it when you observe. So I'm going to put it in here, and we're going to see where it needs to come off. I've noted that there's a bit of extra plastic needs to come off on the left-hand side, and so I'm just cutting off like a millimeter strip here. And then going to put it back in, see if it fits. No, it's not quite right up the top. We're going to have to take a bit out of this part. I'm marking with pencil there. I think that's where the interference is. So I'm shaving that down. Put it in, still not right. There's a little bit needs to come off the top there and in this corner, which is causing me trouble. And then if I chuck it down, perfect, hooray. So now I get out the glue and I glue up all the ledges and the ends of this roof so we can put our new piece of plastic straight in to form our new roof. Using careful hands here, because we don't really want to smudge the glue all over the plastic. That might change how the plastic looks. You get fingerprints melted into it. Next step, everyone's least favorite step, we're doing putty and sanding. So we have to make sure we get the putty into the crack all the way along, and the way I found it helpful is to lay it all out and then just smush it in, which I guess perhaps goes without saying. Using a wooden stick, so I find the wood doesn't stick that much to the stuff and it keeps a flat form pretty easy. Once that's all over, and don't be afraid to get it really all over there, we're going to sand it down, and the sanding down will aggressively get rid of a lot of that material. You see here it's now all evened out, and we'll do one quick check by spraying it up. This isn't the final spray, there are more elements we're going to put on this, but just getting it one consistent coat allows you to see where your imperfections are. There are a few imperfections in here which I did go putty, sand and redo this whole process with, but I just didn't film it here because I didn't think it was interesting to see that twice. But at the end you can see that's relatively smooth. It's good enough for what I want to do. I'm going to chuck that back on the coach, and now we're going to mark out where our roof vents are going to go. So I'm choosing the middle door of each of the cabins plus one for the guards compartment, and measuring the direct center line on this coach because we'll have center mounted roof vents here. Marking that out, I'm going to start the pilot hole with a modeling blade. I always find this helpful instead of going straight in with the screw. It lets you just have that little bit of a hole, and because I guess we don't have like pilot punches for plastic materials. Could do, I just don't. Then once that's out, I'm going to use nails for my roof vents. So the diameter of drill bit I've chosen is just a little under the diameter of the nail so that we have a good interference style fit, low tolerance. And I just go and drill out all the holes down the body of the roof here. Now that that is done, I need to open up the holes just a tad more to get the nail in. So I'm going to go around with the knife there and then throw the nail in, get it to the right level. Is that looking good? It's looking good. So now I'll go and do that with the rest of these. And now that they're all in there and that looks quite nice, we'll just cut the ends of those nails off so they don't hang into the compartments using a bolt cutter and going along there. Isn't that satisfying? Right, now the next thing I'm going to show you is making the curved roof model. So pretend I cut the end off this one because I cut the ends of the original one without filming it, but there we go, flat ends. I've already filled in with some plastic card as well. Then I'm going to come in and measure up the insides here. We're going to make one plate using 1mm thick plastic card that covers all of the inside of that model. Just a flat ceiling for the inside compartment, and from that ceiling we can build the structure that will house the rounded roof that we're going for. Now you'll note that edge of plastic is a different hole cut. That's from our 2 attempts at the flat roof before. It's not one of these ones. This was the first time I tried this and it worked and I'd filmed it. So in I come, just checking to make sure we're getting the exact right fit here on the ceiling. And that was the first cut, and that's pretty much exact. Now I'm getting, this is just a bit of paper or cardboard that I've cut to see the profile of the roof that I want. Happy with that, I'm then going to go and replicate that in the plastic card. It's just far easier to cut this stuff with paper first, then have it go. Luckily, I think that profile was the same as this bit of tape, either that or I've just decided that was close enough and I'm going to use it like that. And to cut a curve, all you do is go around and sort of cut tangential chunks out of the plastic. Then once you've done that, you can get the knife on there and round it out. a little more. And once that's done, you can go over it with the plastic file and really get that curve nice and smooth. And I'm just checking against my model from cardboard here, and that looks just about right. Now, you'll note that we can't just glue that straight onto the piece of plastic we made for the ceiling because it's recessed behind the front of the coach, and that needs to sit exactly on the front of the coach. So there's a few steps we have to take in between. The first step here, I'm gluing these two thinner strips of plastic card together because I'm going to use these to make the spine of the roof. So why does the roof need a spine? Because it will deflect, like bend like a banana if you don't properly brace it. And so we're going to need a few bracing elements that sit up and down the roof. And I made these sort of T-girders which should resist deflection. Then I've gone and made a rough cut of the outside crescent shape so that we can have it glued onto the edge of this plate. Watch me struggle to show you this. But glued onto the edge of the plate and hanging off the edge there. So we're going to mount this onto the first spine. Those two bits I've already glued together off camera. And then we can glue that onto the ceiling as one assembly. And that should hold itself up just proud of the edge there. So it will stick over the edge of the ceiling and onto the front face of the coach. Now that we have this spine piece though, we can create more crescent pieces to sit in the center of the ceiling structure itself so that we can have this shape, the crescent shape of the roof enforced across the plastic that we make for the roof. So we're going to bend it mechanically as well using some heat treatment to set the plastic more correctly. But we do want to have these sort of, I guess, webbings along the spine of the roof so that we can better enforce the shape that we're going for. I really need to learn some good engineering terms for this stuff. Anyway, you can see I've measured it out all perfectly so that we have central crescent-shaped webbings in between each section of spine. This thing looks now rigid, noting that our little webbing sections, our crescent webbings, they sit on top of the walls of the coach so that they're holding the ceiling up to the right height. They're slightly wider than the ceiling itself. Now I'm measuring the distance across one of these bits of crescent-shaped webbing, and that is going to be the width that I need to cut for the roof. So everything up to this point has been using 1mm thick plastic card, and now we're going to the 0.5mm thick plastic card for the roof itself. I'm just testing here the roll to make sure that I can roll the coach over and it fits within these lines. And you do want just a tad extra when you're doing this because you don't want to go through the process of cutting this and bending it and then finding out it's not quite enough. And you do need a bit of overhang as well, just to really sell the illusion. The way we're going to do this, as with previous videos I've done, if you haven't seen them, you don't have to. I've got this one really ratchety looking jar that I tape plastic over so that I can put boiling water in the jar and set a new shape for plastic. This is something that you can do with plastic. It changes its shape under heat. It will revert back to an original shape or revert into a shape that you're setting it to. So you'll note that I can't actually fit the whole roof around this jar, but I'm going to do it in sections. I'm using a bit of water using paper over the top of it to tape it down so I don't get too much sticky tape residue on it. And then I have put some boiling water in that jar, put the lid on it, which will hopefully retain some heat, and set it. Now we get to take it all out. You can see it comes off a little more easily because of that plastic we put down. And now I'm going from the other direction, setting the shape. Make sure you get this thing as vertical as possible as well, because you don't want to set the curve against the axis of the roof. You don't want it like bending out weirdly. Now we're going to glue it on. So what I've done is I put two pieces of paper between the coach and the roof, and I'm going to apply some glue pretty liberally across the ceiling structure, which will, when we put the new bent roof over it, should stick the roof to the ceiling. And because we've got these pieces of paper, the glue is sort of insulated from gluing the ceiling onto the coach, and we'll want to keep these separate because we still need to do some more detailing on the inside. So I'm then using rubber bands to set the shape of the roof. can see you just got to get the first side on and then get the second edge of the roof. Make sure that it's perfect. Make sure you've got enough friction holding it in. And then once you've got both these ends exactly where you want them, you can get more rubber bands, put them in the center across the different webbing supports that we have underneath the roof structure, and then set that to dry for a day or two, just to make sure that it's all hunky-dory before you try anything else. Alright, coming back a day or two later, and I'm pulling off the rubber bands. We're going to pull by the paper and get the roof off. You'll see the paper stopped it from sticking to the body of the coach itself, and we now have a roof. Doing another test fit. That's pretty baller. I like that. Alright, now we need to extend these braces at the edge up onto this new roof section. So I've marked out on pencil where I want them to go, and I'm going to cut some really, really thin strips of plastic card, which I can then cut to the right size and glue here above and sell the illusion that that ribbing continues up. Now, it can be quite hard to measure the size of these properly, so do a dry run, get the little bit of plastic card on there, see if it's the right size before we go to glue it down. Once you've got it exactly right, we can then push it aside a tiny bit, get a small amount of glue on an edge of an applicator, and really a small amount because any glue marks will show up on the face of the model, and then put it into place. And then we can do that for the rest of our little pieces. And I'm just showing you them getting glued in right at the end here, right after I've done every little step. Now at the moment this doesn't look too convincing, but it's because we haven't painted anything yet. You'll see once the paint goes on, it looks quite a bit more convincing. Alright, next step here on the roof is the gutters details. So I am cutting a very, very thin piece of plastic card to make the gutter. I'm just checking to see that it is long enough before I start the process of gluing it down. It does appear to be long enough, so that's good. I'm going to try and straighten it out a tad before I get to this gluing stage. Now this is quite tricky to glue down, so you start with just a small amount of this glue, just the front bit. We'll get that into position, and then we'll continually apply glue where we want it. And that's, again, so that we don't end up rubbing glue all along the plastic face. If we had have had it all on the strip to begin with, we would have ended up just getting our fingerprints all over the plastic. So you've just got to be a bit careful about how you do it. Limit the amount of glue you're using, and make sure we're limiting the amount of smearing we can get. So this wasn't really a perfect job, and if I was being pedantic, I'd probably just go back. But as much as this is also to teach you how to make models, it's teaching how to accept average models. You've got to give something a go first before you can start critiquing yourself. Nothing's ever going to be perfect the first time. So have a go, learn some new skills, and then once you've done it once or twice, you can always go back and say, actually, I hated that. Let's go again. Now, I'm drilling for the roof vents here, and I've forgotten that I have a spine in the center of this. That thing just went way off center, and I butchered it trying to get back into center. You can see me here wondering about my life choices and then just deciding to roll with it. I would suggest for this coach doing roof vents down the sides. So having them to one side or having them to both sides, like pairs of vents per compartment instead of one in the center. If you're doing a spine in the center, just plan for that better than I did. It doesn't look so great. The keen-eyed amongst you will notice that the model is painted now, and that's because I've returned after an 8-month hiatus to finish this video. So putting the roof on, you'll see it's bananaing a little bit, and that's just something that will happen when you glue all the plastic together. We need to make a way to stick it down a bit more permanently, so I'm proposing that I install this plastic tube in through the rivet and screw it from the underside. So it's attached to the roof, it'll hold the roof down via that screw into the rivet, and then we'll be able to counteract the bananaing. And this is just a general good way to hold the roof down. We'll see shortly this doesn't quite work, but I'll show you how I did it anyway, because I think it's good to learn some lessons on things and show some failures. So I get the tube, I put some white paint on the end of it, and I stick it up against that roof so that we can mark the point that we have to drill in. I then use a pilot hole, make a pilot hole with my knife, and then finish it off with a drill bit. And after that, I put the rod into there and I just test to see the fit through the bogey rivet in the coach. Then I'm gonna mark out where we need to cut the rod now that that all lines up and that works right. I'm cutting just a little bit shy of the line so that the rod is slightly shorter than the edge of the rivet, so that when we put the screw in, it's got something to, it's got some distance to hold down with, if you get what I mean. There's a little less rod in there, so we can actually pull the roof down. I glue that up and then put it into the hole, and I set that to dry for about a day so that when I put that screw in, it's not just gonna turn the whole thing around. And then I do that for the other end of the coach as well. So now we've got two rods that stick down from the roof into the rivet holes that we can screw on and stop the roof from bananaing and to hold it down generally. I then put some rubber bands around the roof to hold it into the correct position whilst everything inside dries, and pick it up the next day where I discover the main problem that I've put in place here. You see, when I go to screw a screw into the tube, and it will tighten against the rivet, and by tightening against the rivet, it actually restricts the movement of the bogey, because the bogey needed a bit of freedom of movement in that rivet to be able to move itself. So that's not good. We're gonna have to come back to the drawing board. I still think this is a good idea. We just need to execute it somewhere else. And I've noticed that if you take off the outermost axle in the bogies, you can pivot the bogey across and get to the center line of the floor of the body. And so I can drill a hole here that's the right size for the tube and a screw, and we'll be able to hold the roof down from there. So I'm doing the same process now, just putting the roof on, putting a tube through my new hole with some white paint, marking out where it needs to attach to the ceiling, and then drilling a hole into that ceiling so that we can install the rod. So I do a test fit here, just also to get the length of it, because we need to cut down the length again so that we can make it short enough so that there's actually some displacement for the screw to pull in and hold the roof down. So I cut that, but you can't see it because I did it off camera, and there we are, it's in there. Now, learning a lesson from my last attempt, I screw the thread in first so that we can embed the thread before everything's glued down, because I did actually torsion one of the tubes off last time when I let it dry and then tried to put the screw in it. So now I'm going to leave this to dry for a day. I've done the other end as well. So same thing as before, put it on the body, hold it down with some rubber bands, and come back the next day, which is now you can see the lighting's changed. So I'm going to put a screw into that. Now it's all dried and it's all set in place, and you'll see that it works. I'm not going to over tighten the bogey here, and it looks pretty schmick. The lines have gone, the bananaing's disappeared. Hooray, that's how you attach a roof. I'll take you back in time now briefly to look at the interior of the coaches. You would have noticed that I had some seats in there that look like these little guys. They fit and are held mostly by the little studs that are designed to hold in the window glazing. So how did I make these? This is just using cardboard. So I'm cutting a big strip that is 2.5 centimeters thick and cutting that out of the cardboard. This is a pretty flat cardboard as well. It needs to be quite thin. I'm then making 2 centimeter tall sections, which are going to be the vertical seat backs, and cutting those out. And then I'm going to install a notch on them at 0.5 millimeters off the bottom edge, and that notch will interface with another piece of cardboard which will also have a notch in it. But cutting them out, these are going to form the backs of the seats. The next part is then to cut some 3 centimeter sections out of the same thickness of cardboard, and I'm going to put the notches here at the exact halfway point. So that should be 1.5 centimeters from any of the edges. And then we need to bend that around itself to form a long rectangle shape with an open center edge. You'll see what that looks like when I bunch it all together after folding this last little bit. It's 1 centimeter wide on the top with 0.5 centimeter each other part. So we're going to feed that through into our vertical back part, and you can see we've now made a bench that is half a centimeter out from the seat back on both ends, and sort of all the dimensions of it are half centimeter square log thing, if that's a way to put it. And then covering it in masking tape. What this does is that there's edges in the cardboard, and we're going to get rid of those edges when we paint it up. And by putting the masking tape on here, that sort of provides a smooth surface for the paint to sit on that'll get rid of the fact this thing's made out of cardboard. Putting it in there, it looks pretty good, so I'm ready to glue it up now and putting it in there with the other ones. Now we need to do the back end, and this is much simpler, just a single piece of cardboard, same cut of strip that we had before, and we're going to put it into this like little L knee shape thing and just glue that onto the end. And that looks a fair bit better than the other ones anyway. Put one on the other end and that's done, and you can see once the glazing's on, that looks fine through the glazing. And we're on to the last stretch here, which is just our final details. So 2 things left to do. One is weather, second is glazing. I think it's easier to complete your weathering and painting before the glass is in, so you don't have to worry about dirtying up the glass. So I'm doing the weathering now. I've got some artist pastels, a dark brown color, which I have powderized using a Stanley knife, and I'm going to apply it with a nice and soft brush, an old paintbrush I don't care about, onto the model. And you can see it applies quite thickly. I'm going to apply it all over the model at the same consistency because we're going to then take it off, which is the funny thing about weathering. You put it on and then you take it off. So what we really want to end up with here is the details highlighted. So we want all the depths and the raised parts to have a very different hue on them to give an impression of a shadow and a bit of more dirt on the places where the cleaners can't quite get to. So I've gone ahead and put a Q-tip in some water whilst immediately after I've applied the powder, and I'm now going over the model with that to get the dirt out of the locations that are easy to clean, which will just leave it in the crevices and in the dark little bits that need the detailing. It's very important to really get into those panels just so you've got the powder along the outside, and that looks much better than what we started with. And now it's time for the glazing. So because I lost the original glazing for the Clerestory Coaches, I'm going with a takeaway container here. I'm just cutting out a nice rectangle section from one of its best edges, and I'm going to cut that to size and just continually check against the model. I'm then going to cut this thing in half to get the strips that we need for the each side here. Testing the fit, you can see it's a little tall, so I'm just going to have to cut it down a tad bit more before we can get it back in there. And that looks good, so it's time for glue. I'm going to put the glue along the bottom of the model to begin with only, because you don't want to get glue on the face of the glazing. That will leave white streaks, it'll leave fingerprint marks if you pick it up and put it down incorrectly. You want to push the glazing onto where the glue is, and then when the bottom is glued and it's in the right position, I'm going to put glue on the top and spread it in with a Q-tip, and that way I didn't get any glue on the face of the glazing itself. And now it's time for the reveal of the coaches. Now, you might be wondering what happened to the plain Clerestory coach, and I just didn't change anything to it yet. I will paint this thing up later. I think I'm going to make it red. But the other two look quite nice next to it. I think the weathering really adds value there. It brings out the details and makes them look a fair bit nicer. I've replaced, well, I'm in the process of replacing the couplings on the other ones. I do KD on my stock, so that's going to be another video, how to choose and do KD couplings for UK stock. But yeah, this is the finished product. I think it turned out well. I think if I was to do it again, I'd be a bit more careful on the roof vents. But apart from that, I'm happy with these fellas. I think they probably need a little more weight in them. And I mean, that doesn't really need to be included in the video. Anyway, enjoy some video of them running, pulled by Duck, who's the only engine I own with a NEM pocket, so he can have a tension lock coupling. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you give this one a try for yourself.